But when it comes to gated villa communities, as you mentioned, we are the pioneers. We started it in Sri Lanka for the first time. So the ROI is generally very high, and I would say it's 3 times higher than what you get in Colombo. We attract Sri Lankan expats to move into these developments because it's direct foreign investment that they are going to come in. One-to-one attention is critical. People are moving away from this heavy volume-based approach because they need the human touch. Juniper is not just a number. You don't become just that number. You are one of us.
Hi everyone, and joining me in the studio today is Yatila Wijemanne, Chairman of the Juniper Group, a research-oriented, location-driven boutique real estate firm. Welcome, Yatila.
Hi, nice to see you today.
We've known each other for a long time.
Very long time.
Exactly.
Very long time.
You've been in the real estate industry for a long time, and something that I've known as analyst of the industry is location is everything. And one of the things that have been driving real estate investment around the world, obviously, is tied to tourism. And this country is blessed with many natural resources. But what I've noticed is even though the entire country really is loved by tourists, they pick specific areas, and there is concentration there, and they're willing to pay anything for it. So particularly on the south coast, I think there's been a huge development in terms of tourism. What's driving this, and how does that tie in with real estate development?
Actually, the tourism sector within the country has been growing extensively, especially in the recent past. However, the southern coast has always been extremely attractive than most of the other parts of the country. And this has also happened, if you look at it, it has been largely there with the concepts of the sun, the sand and the sea. So there has been that movement of tourists that are moving both foreign and local. However, now the situation has changed a bit. The entire crux has moved. So it's largely moving with the entertainment aspect of things and the extracurricular activities that are there, and also with the F&B. So the culinary aspect is one angle. The other angle is the extracurricular activities such as the surfing and so on that has come in a very large way across 3 or 4 bays in the southern belt. And also the other one is the nightlife and the entertainment. So it has gone beyond. So as a result of it, tourism is growing extensively, and as real estate developers, it is our responsibility also to move in to those areas to provide the infrastructure that we need to cater to the tourism industry. So actually, if you look at it, if you break it down, it's largely developed with the surfing, then the culinary aspect of things, and also the entertainment that is around, such as the nightlife and all that. And culinary is everywhere.
Of course.
Yeah, down south has more variety than some parts of Colombo. So it's to that level of social integration of different cultures.
When it comes to specific locations, right, I think mainly driven by social media trends, places like Ahangama, Hittigatia, they seem to become like a hotspot, right? What unique opportunities do these specific locales provide for investment?
Actually, if you look at Ahangama, which is one of our projects at the moment, and we launched it a couple of months ago, which we actually sold out at the moment. So this is the first time in Sri Lanka that we brought in gated villa communities. So we wanted an integrated setup where any investor can move in, purchase one of our villas at an affordable rate, so that one thing is they can enjoy it, plus we will do the entire 360-degree aspect to them. So that is the reason why we went in and selected Ahangama. And why we selected Ahangama, coming back to your point in relation to location. Location is one element, and with this location comes the natural setup, such as the Ahangama Bay, and also which is a heavy surfing bay, and is only 5 kilometers to Waligama, which is one of the largest bays for surfing. And then also, on the other hand, the critical aspect, like we mentioned, was the culinary angle and the entertainment. So tourists don't want to just be anymore within their villa or in relation to their hotel. Now they just take bed and breakfast. They move out, they want to experience, but doesn't necessarily mean they need to experience the Sri Lankan culinary angle. They would like to experience other cultures. So it's actually a social integration that is taking place, and communities are getting built around it. And we've been part of it in Ahangama. And Hirikati is the similar thing. It's more like a bohemian concept that is there, the bohemian sort of a lifestyle, and it's actually attracting a vast amount of locals and foreigners to move in.
Very interesting perspective. Tourism and real estate used to be somewhat different industries, right? Because tourism used to be very specific about just accommodation and maybe one meal or two meals. Real estate is something much more than that, encompasses a whole milieu of things. With tourism becoming one of the most pivotal industries in this country, what is the intersection of real estate and tourism? How is it coming together? And what does it present in terms of investment opportunities?
Actually, our company, like I mentioned, we are largely research driven. So we identify strategic locations and we operate across 5 to 6 districts in the country. We are not volume driven. So we are specific location driven. So with our research, we did clearly identify that the southern belt has a huge requirement in relation to the provision of proper sorts of accommodation. So we moved in with that concept and we decided, even though it is the first time in Sri Lanka that we have done it, numerous countries have brought in gated villa communities where your entire concept has been handled end to end. So this is the reason why we went in. I'll just give you an example. Now say for example, you have an investment, you want to be part of the tourism and you want to enjoy the benefits of it, travel around, but then you go find your property, which is about a, say, 20 perch lot. You develop your own villa. You have to then bring in your own security, your own management, your economies of scale. All of that start playing a role where eventually you will sometimes at some point you will get fed up. So you will just lose interest in trying to handle that because when you calculate end of the day your cost, you might not be, it will not generate the return that you're expecting. So when developers like ourselves, which is very boutique developers, and we have a very strong image across, which is a very strong image that we have in relation to boutique developments, and then we move in, they come in. So any investor can buy one of the villas within this, they can utilize it at any given time they want, and then we will handle it for them at any point. So they become part of this development drive. And this is our responsibility as developers to actually cater to the growing demand that is there and also encourage that sort of investment into that area. If I just take a step further, I mean, this is a social aspect. So there is a sustainable social benefit. So we try to bring in our vision to that area, but then there is a society that builds around with it. So it's a sustainable sort of development. Say, for example, our development in Ahangama. We are doing the gated villa communities. The neighborhood is starting to cater to us. The neighborhood starts putting up the restaurants that are needed. They provide the transport that will be needed. So all that will generate that. So that is actually a social integration which we are doing. So as developers, I think it is extremely critical that we move in that angle. And of course, it is an absolute provision for any client from anywhere in the world to purchase part of this real estate and wash their hands off. They have nothing to worry because we are handling it for them.
Because,
yeah.
Because you have a social license to operate, right?
Exactly.
And that is something that you have to adhere to in terms, even for globally recognized clients, to sort of say, I want to be a part of this development because my developer is, doing it sustainably.
Exactly.
You've been in the industry for a long time.
Yes.
And I'm sure you have noticed changes in the purchasing patterns of why people purchase, where they purchase, the way they, structure their investment, time horizons, how they look to exit. What have you seen as the biggest changes in real estate over the last 15, 20 years that you've been in the industry?
Actually, I would like to say this because Sri Lanka is sometimes, what can I say, a country with uncertain walls. So we experience a lot of different issues which are beyond our control. So if you look at it in that context, especially over the last 5 years, we have experienced the COVID situation and then also the economic downturn. So consumer patterns and client purchasing patterns have drastically switched. And it is the responsibility of us to continue with our research and also identify the changes in these patterns to bring about developments which would cater One thing is, as real estate developers, we have to sustain. But we can't sustain on providing infrastructure and providing developments which are not going to bring greater benefits to the client and the society as whole. So the sustainable aspect is critical. So therefore, the research also has to be up to date. So it's not going to be a volume driven. So therefore, these patterns have changed. It's just that if you look at it like from a round perspective, the percentages have changed. So there are numerous clients, the first time buyers to third time buyers who have excess funds, all that. But the point being, the percentages change with the times. But now people are, for example, some want a capital gain. So they will stay for the property to appreciate in value by purchasing a land plot. Some others want an ROI. Some will move into metropolitan areas to try and find actually in Sri Lanka, the metropolitan areas, especially Colombo, the ROI is low because the investment that you make, the return that you're going to get is lower, the rental yield is much lower. But then contrary to that, in certain other areas, your ROI is very high. So these are the manners in which these consumer patterns change. So the graphs are the same, percentages are drastically changing.
Interesting. Real estate as an industry is a long-term one. So people do match, risk versus return and so on. But if you concentrate your investment in specific areas, I'm sure from your experience, you can get a better return. And I think you're coming just into that. Taking, say, the southern coast, for example, a specific area, what sort of returns can investors look for in the next 5 to 10 years? And particularly, you said you're the pioneers of the gated community in this country. Looking at international examples, what sort of returns can we expect in one of those? And final question is, in addition to the financial return, I mean, it's a passion project, right? Yes. So obviously, you're getting something more than a financial return. So looking at all of that, what are your observations in terms of the southern coast as a specific area?
So actually, like coming back to your first question, which was real estate is driven on location. Yes, I 100% agree with it. But when it comes to gated villa communities, as you mentioned, we are the pioneers. We started it in Sri Lanka for the first time. And as a company, if you look at it, when you come into these gated villa communities, it's not only the location. Who is the developer? What kind of financial credibility does this developer have? Is he hardly volume driven? Is he boutique driven? And then it's the developer's creativity. It's a team. I mean, it's not me, it's our team. The creativity of our team has to bring that vision onto the project. So that is how we move first. So the designs, the interior, the elements of it have to move in. For example, the ROI, like you mentioned, one thing is southern belt, if you're beach facing or you're non-beach facing, those factors are location based. But who is managing it for you? Who is who is managing the villa management for you? What kind of tourists are they trying to attract? What kind of interior are we providing? What kind of mattresses or the beds or the sheets are these clients the tourists are going to sleep on? So these are the details that we go into, and we have gone into it. Hence the reason why we have a following to purchase, because that is actually your character that is shown through this. So hence the reason we move in very, very boutique based. So this is how we would like to operate. So the ROI is generally very high, and I would say it's 3 times higher than what you get in Colombo as far as the simple return is concerned. Of course, it depends on the borrowing capacities and what kind of interest rates and all of that. But yes, so because even at the same location, you can have a higher return if the interiors and the infrastructure has been dealt beautifully. So that's what we are pushing for, and so far it's done a great job for us and the client.
Great to hear. Just want to know, narrow in more about your group.
Mm-hmm.
Its corporate values, its goals, aspirations have been very aligned with the developing the country itself, and also where tourism, the vision for the country itself is aligned. What particular actions have you taken to sort of position yourself Look, I think there's a conscious effort being made to attract more high-end tourists. Slow, but we're getting there. How is the Juniper Group, positioning itself to sort of capitalize on this?
Actually, this is a very good question that you faced it. I'll try to break it into two. I hope I can break it into two. And one element is the tourists that are coming in. So our developments are not catered towards the low-end tourists. Our developments are catered to the mid and higher mid-end sort of the tourists that are coming in. So therefore, the developments are at that much of a higher quality, even though it's affordable. With the ticket size is very affordable. And then also, that is one of the key elements that we are working on. And the other main aspect that we work on is, as a country, we need to sustain our development efforts, and we are responsible for this. So in this responsibility, what we could do is we could attract, this is what we are doing, we attract Sri Lankan expats to move into these developments. Because it's direct foreign investment that they are going to come in. So the dollars are sent in, the dirhams are sent in, and we see 50 to 60% of our clients are moving in their foreign currency to Sri Lanka to purchase our units. And we are seeing that pattern, which is amazing, because they are transferring, then they transfer the funds in, then they get to the money comes into the entire multiplier concept. And this is where, even in our way, which we can contribute to the growth of the Sri Lankan economy, because we've sustained a very hard time at one point for 2 to 2.5 years prior to that COVID. But COVID was good for real estate. Yes, COVID was very good for us, which is a bad thing to say in that context. But for us, the real estate development grew heavily. Real estate developers were at its peak point if the marketing and their strategies were right. And location-based was very strong. But then, yes, the economic downturn had its impact. But now we are responsible that we've held on the hard times. Now it's our responsibility to gear it and push it forward. So in our way, whether it's big or small, we are contributing to this growth trajectory that Sri Lanka is experiencing.
Certain niche destinations, say for example, from Bali to Spain, Japan, they're getting very tired of over tourism.
Yes.
And tourists go there, particularly Spain or Japan, very high end, then on the lower end of the basket. How can we capitalize on the frustration there to attract at least a small part of these high end tourists here?
There are a number of elements that need to work in. I think one of the key elements that we need to have a certain team that is operating to attract that. We have very high-end villas, and our service levels have to be brought up. I mean, our service levels are in certain sectors not on par with not the European countries.
Right.
I'm talking of the Asian countries such as in Indonesia, Bali, and so on, and then in Thailand.
Of course.
The service levels, and they're higher. And but I would say our interiors and our infrastructure in comparison to certain resorts in Bali is far higher.
Right.
So this has to go out there. This has to be spoken about. And we need to ensure that there is a word sent out that there is security.
Yes.
And I'm giving you a personal example. I mean, I was in Bali 2 months ago, and I was getting harassed on the street.
Really?
Yes. So people were coming and giving leaflets and all of that. But in Sri Lanka, you don't get that.
Of course.
Yes. So I don't see that level. So I think we have what it takes. We just need a proper structure. We are having political stability, which is a critical aspect, whether it will go beyond a certain point. So that encourages these high-end tourists to move in. And we need to also, our industry, our tourism, our development boards have to be a bit more flexible.
Of course.
Especially when it comes to approvals.
Yes.
This is one of the key aspects that we also experience. There are certain local authorities that are tremendous. I don't want to mention the local authorities, but they are so efficient. They're doing a tremendous job, the UDA and so on. But then on the other hand, there are certain who don't understand that what we are trying to do is not trying to bring in a development and make money out of it. Of course, but what I'm saying is we are bringing an entire network in.
Creating a new ecosystem.
The next door neighbor will start a restaurant. He will use his vehicle to transport to the airport. All that starts developing. So they need to encourage and fast track these developments in, because it's definitely going to help the entire overall picture. So I know so many developments are not coming on board. There are severe delays. So I think these are the aspects they need to look at, and they need to be flexible. Let's look at Maldives. It's built on the sea. And then on the context you take, we have everywhere, but we have to have so many regulations to even have a swimming pool near the beach. So these are aspects which we need to deregularize and provide. So I think the present system hopefully would understand these to encourage the flow of income into those regions.
Of course. And look at the yield difference. I mean, you're very close to each other as countries, but the yields are completely
different.
Exactly.
Because you're coming for the experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Look into the future. Tourism authorities have very ambitious targets. Touchwood, things have been very good in terms of security, in terms of no health scares. Connectivity is improving. I hear Singapore Airlines are going to add 3 more flights, and everybody else is also looking at new connectivity. What is your Juniper Group's vision in terms of the future? How are you going to tap into Sri Lanka's overall tourism vision? And also, what makes you a unique partner for anyone looking from overseas? So, look, there's a million real estate partners you can deal with today. It's becoming commoditized, which is very sad to see, because real estate was always a bit of a niche area. So what makes you a different partner?
Like you answered, because we are niche. Because one-to-one attention is critical. People are moving away from this heavy volume-based approach because they need the human touch. So they need to be in touch. They need to know what kind of development they are getting into. Is the developer going to be around? Are they going to put you onto another call waiting? Or are you going to be handled through one of the representatives? Can I get direct access to the ownership, the senior management, discuss with them what we can provide, the issues that they're experiencing, and can they structure their systems accordingly? So this is one of the reasons why we see the Sri Lankan expats and certain Sri Lankan locals purchasing through us. They've been to certain other developers. They've had good experience with some. With some, they have not had that experience because they feel they're just a number. So Juniper is not just a number. You don't become just that number. You are one of us, and we want to grow with you together. We understand sometimes that there are certain issues that happen, but we want to work with you through that. So this is one of the key elements. So coming back to the tourism aspect, I mean, from the perspective of a developer, more than a direct tourist operator, from a developer's perspective, we will be continuing a large number of gated villa communities in strategic locations across different tourist sectors within the country, which is a clear indication for the investors to come in with us. They can, of course, they become clear sole owners of their villa, but they can also hand it over to us so that we can operate it for them, so that they can earn that extra, and they can actually make it one of their key income lines, because as I mentioned, it's 3 times. The returns in certain sectors, certain pockets is 3 times direct on once the development is complete. It's purely driven with the aspect of tourism, both foreign and local. And coming back to another point, it's really that I don't think we should worry about the season off season.
Of course.
Yeah,
I think we're moving away from that.
We have to move away, and I think even tourist operators or developers like us, when we have discussions, we should understand it throughout. There's severe potential to grow, and I think things will do. I think Sri Lanka will do very well going forward.
I see the passion of the Juniper Group. I see our own personal passion. Good luck with your initiatives. Thank you for your time.